the gym for your mind.
What are all the different things I can try to calm myself down right now? What you learn in meditation is to control your mental space, to keep it clean, to keep it functional, to make better choices in order to keep yourself both productive and calm.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Forever Fit podcast. Today's guest is someone who is literally changing how we train the brain. Joining me is Ariel Garten, neuroscientist, former psychotherapist, and co-founder of Muse, the company pioneering consumer brain sensing technology and building what is now the world's largest EEG database with nearly 1 billion minutes of brain data collected. That is a lot of brain analyzed. So Muse has been trusted with over 500,000 users using 200 plus peer-reviewed research studies and adopted by institutions like Harvard, NASA, and the Mayo Clinic. What really excites me is what they're doing now. So Muse has just released a new era of mental fitness with the launch of the Muse S Athena, which I've had right here and had the pleasure of playing around with for a few weeks now. So the first consumer wearable to combine EEG brainwave sensing with fNIRS technology, which measures blood oxygenation in the brain. In simple terms, it doesn't just track focus, it helps train mental strength, endurance, and recovery, much like physical training does for the body. So today we're going to explore how brain training actually works, why mental fatigue and cognitive decline aren't inevitable, how stress, sleep, and focus shape long-term performance, and how tools like the Muse S Athena are changing the future of brain health. So Ariel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It is my joy and pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this interview. And we learned before we started recording, you're like near where I grew up in Canada.
Totally. I'm nearly at your birthplace.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Ottawa. It's only a few minutes away. So I told you before we started recording, I actually, when you guys reached out for this episode, I was so excited because I was given this device by, my late partner when I was a caregiver through her cancer journey, just because of how stressed out I was, being in a caregiver position and building a business and trying to provide. And she was trying to find tools for me to manage my stress and build a little bit more of a mental resilience. And it was more on the meditation front when she first gave it to me to kind of introduce me to meditation. And the original device that you guys had did wonders for me in terms of managing my stress. So I wanted on record to say a big thank you because you guys played a big role in me not going crazy during that period of my life.
It's amazing. And actually, as I'm hearing this, I'm getting quite choked up because it's incredible to meet someone who we've never met before, but meet someone whose life you've been able to touch and been able to support. And I know with your work, it's so important for you to feel like you're supporting your audience and giving them, meaningful information and tools. And it's incredible for me to meet someone who I have unwittingly helped and supported. So thank you.
Yeah, and we'll get into the devices and everything, but those little birds help shape my brain, and we'll share people what those birds come from. But before we get into the technology and kind of how it works, give a little bit of a background for people. So before you were into like neuroscience and tech, who is Ariel Garten?
Sure. So I was somebody who was always curious about the brain and how it worked. So I went to school for neuroscience, and then became a practicing psychotherapist because there are kind of two different ways that you can access the brain. You can do it through the brain, the organ of the brain, and help people optimize the physical functioning of it, or you can enter through the psychology. And I attempted to do both. So I became a psychotherapist and worked there as a decade while I built Muse as a tool that could track your brain and give you real-time feedback to help you improve your meditation, now help you improve your sleep and improve your overall brain health.
Where was the initial passion to want to dedicate such a big chunk of your life and to want to go study the brain?
Oh man, I mean, the brain is the center of everything. As we look around the room, as we think, as we feel, as we, touch our hand to our face or our chest, all of these things are either initiated by or understood through the brain. And so I really wanted to understand how the brain worked and more importantly, how we could use that information to help people live better lives, think more efficiently, feel better every day. So, for me, it's all about the brain. And I've been honored to dedicate the majority of my life now, 46. So, this started more than 20 years ago. Amazing to have been able to dedicate the majority of my life to helping understand and decode the brain.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because everyone that does any kind of work to serve the world usually comes from like a deep, deep why, deep reason. Was there like a part of you that kind of understood that you had the ability to change yourself and you kind of experienced the gift of that and you wanted to offer that to the world? Was there a family member that you're like, I wish I could just help them to be a bit more of this? Like, was there like ever a moment in your life that was like a pivotal moment that was like, that is why I love psychology so much. I love the brain so much.
So I think those moments emerged as I started doing this. I started out
Mm.
pretty naive. I started out a young kid who was just in school with a lot of curiosity, and I stumbled into a research lab where we were doing brain computer interface technology, and we were interacting with devices directly with our brain. And I said, like, wow, this is incredible. You can interact directly with the world with your brain. I need to bring this out to the world. And then as I went through my own maturation, you inevitably end up with all sorts of issues in your own life and have to figure out how to overcome them. For me, I had some trauma in my 20s that led to multiple chemical sensitivities. So I had to do a lot of retraining of my fear systems to overcome that. Um, uh, Bipolar and OCD run in my family. So it wasn't so much when I was young, when I was starting this, but as you grow and you see the impact of this in other people's life, then you start to really help with figuring out how to make their lives better. And then throughout the course of using Muse, I've now met hundreds and hundreds of people who've used the devices and seen improvement in their life. So, as you grow, you gain more wisdom, compassion, knowledge, understanding of the real problems in this world, things you don't understand when you're younger. And that only fuels your desire to get better and better at treating them. And then along the way, I also had multiple concussions. So that gave me a whole other perspective, as somebody who lived with a brain that worked quite well, it did well in school and all these things. And then you get hit on the head and you can't really think and you can't actually read,
Yeah.
all these things that were like so basic, I could no longer do. And it was once I'd already built Muse, once I already had all these tools and had all of these neuroscience connections to support me. And even with all of my knowledge and tools and connections, it was so hard to get out of that concussion loop and heal through it. So at every step, you just gain more and more compassion for people who exist in different ways, who have different challenges that they may or may not overcome in life, and a real acceptance of people for what they are, and acceptance for yourself and where you're at and your limitations, while constantly, continuing to do what you can to overcome them.
Yeah, that's a beautiful why. I always like to get the deep reasoning behind the guests when I start an interview because then it just makes everything make so much more sense and it's just that much deeper of a meaning. So I appreciate you sharing that. And on the concussion, for I had one in this past July from basketball, my first one ever. So I'm I'm going through a little bit of what you shared. So that's why I'm excited to use the device. You mentioned you started this almost 20 years ago. I don't think there was a lot of sensor-based companies back in the day, right? Was the Apple Watch around? I know Whoop wasn't around, Oring wasn't around. Like there wasn't and too many of those devices.
None of that was around. Okay, so I started in a research lab in 2001 where we had an early brain computer interface device through a big fiber optic cable to a desktop computer, like a computer stack.
Really
And at
portable.
that point, yeah, not at all portable. And like the smartphone hadn't yet been invented.
Mm,
None of those technologies existed. There was no cloud computing. There was nothing that allowed us to make this portable. And as we went along the journey of development, in 2010, my husband got his first iPhone. And that was, such a jumping off point to say, hey, the technology can now be portable because we can have computers in our pockets. As cloud computing came out, then it was like, hey, we can connect this information to the cloud, so we're not limited to the amount of computational power or storage on our phones. AI came out, and it's like, hey, we can now do large scale analyses on vast amounts of brain data and personalize that information in real time. So it's been an incredible technological journey. You talk about the Apple Watch, but like when we first launched, our first prototypes we were making around 2012. That's when we initially came to market. In 2014 was when we launched with our first real consumer device in Best Buy. And at that point, there was the Nike Fuel Band, the Jawbone Up, all of these wearables that we no longer hear about. The very
Yeah.
first ones that came and went.
Yeah.
They're far from the Apple Watch.
Yeah, very very far from the Apple Watch. How did you guys manage to? It's more like a business question, but how did you guys manage to kind of stay relevant as kind of like the world progressed and technology evolved? And like you mentioned, when the iPhone came out, there was no app store right away, right? I think that like, and for you guys to be able to develop your app and kind of the software that you guys have now, like, so how have you managed to kind of stay relevant and continue to progress in this industry?
So that's the brilliance of my co-founder, Chris Amony. Was our CTO, or Chief Innovation Officer, and he really has his finger on the pulse of technology and is constantly thinking far into the future. And it's almost as if the available technology eventually catches up to his thoughts, and he's like, "Oh, here's this thing I've been waiting for. We can now do this. We can now use it." So, people talk a lot about AI. We were doing what was then called deep learning back in 2012, 2013, 2014, because we are based out of the University of Toronto, which is where Jeff Hinton, the guy who created deep learning, what we now think of as real AI, that's where he was based. So we had students from his lab working with us back in 2014. So it's really about understanding what's coming down the pipeline and working with people on the cutting edge to make sure that you're always integrating those technologies, and then having a completely brilliant genius in Chris Amony at the lead of our company who's kept integrating all these technologies and continues to do so. So like our latest device, we used to be first Muse device was just EEG, which was a really big deal that we were able to take EEG, which is something that's usually used in the lab with wet electrodes and cables and wires. And back in 2012, we came up with a wireless dry sensor EEG device that anybody could put on themselves. Like that was a huge innovation. And then in your Apple Watch, there's something called a PPG sensor. It's the thing that reads your heart rate and your HRV. So then in 2017, we were able to take that technology and integrate it. So now we had EEG and PPG. And then in 2020, we revolutionized the entire form factor of the device to become soft and something that you could sleep with, because we were able to innovate a new kind of fabric sensor so that you could put it in a soft, comfy headband and get great signal quality dry sensor. And then we were looking to upgrade our PPG, which is the photoplasmograph, the light that shines through that little red and green light. It reads your blood flow and gives you information about your pulse rate. And Chris was looking at this and said, hold on, while we upgrade our PPG, I think we can add 4 more sensors and actually send light right to the surface of the blood-brain barrier and sample oxygenation there. So we're not even looking at just the blood pumping from your heart and looking at the oxygen. We're actually looking at the oxygen levels of your brain. And so we recently came out with the new device, the Muse Athena, which combines both EEG and this technology called FNIRS. It's functional near infrared spectroscopy that reads both the electrical activity with EEG as well as the blood flow in your prefrontal cortex and allows you to train and upregulate your oxygen levels. So, his brilliance is just constantly capturing the next piece of technology before it even emerges and building it into the devices. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. Honestly, just seeing the progression from this device, because the previous device that you guys had was more solid, right? You couldn't bend it. It was the shape of your head. You had to put it on. And I remember there's a gap between the sensor and the headband is a little bit of space. And you put it behind your ear, right?
Exactly. So that went on more like a pair of glasses with the sensors on your forehead, and this one is more like a comfortable headband that wraps around your whole head.
So you guys had to invent basically had to invent the technology or make it work so that you could make it so flexible into the band.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of years of creating, it's called a flex PCB. So normally PCBs are rigid. They're the little essentially computers that are powering all of your devices, and they're typically quite small. And so very early on, 10 years ago, we started to really innovate in flexible PCBs, so flexible computing, so it could wrap around your head and squish and conform to the size of your head. And then really focus on creating new eras of sensor technology so that we can get really, really good signal, EEG signal from your brain with dry, flexible sensors.
That's incredible, especially to be able to think that far ahead. And like you said, when the technology comes out, it's like, cool, we've been waiting for this. Let's kind of add this to it. We have a game plan ready for it already. Um, I want to. I'll pivot the line of questioning to like the brain waves and kind of how the device works and kind of what it does, because it's been highly beneficial. That's why I wanted to have you guys on the podcast, because from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I can talk to you for like 4 hours. I have so many questions I'd love to ask you. But just for the people listening, so we don't nerd out too much on like the technology and all those things, because they want to know what is it going to do for me. One of the things, do you mind covering all the brain waves? Because one of the things, once you set up the new Muse S Athena and you're logged into your app, you're able to kind of see all the brain waves, and then it asks you to kind of like blink, and then you kind of see the spike or to yawn or whatever. So do you mind sharing all the different type of brain waves that it
Sure.
senses, and then why is each of them important and what do they do?
Sure. So Muse, as I mentioned, is an EEG electroencephalograph. So it is measuring your brainwave activity. So our neurons, the cells in your brain, communicate electrochemically. So there's little electrical signals that go back and forth from neuron to neuron, and that's how they communicate. Now, the sum total of this electrical information can be read on the surface of the head. So if you imagine an orchestra, each of the instruments in the orchestra is playing their tune, and then together, all of the instruments together make a beautiful sound that you can hear when you sit in the audience and listen to the whole orchestra. So it's kind of like that EEG sensor is you sitting in the audience listening to this whole symphony going on. And if you then take the sound of the symphony that you hear from the audience, you can decompose that and listen to the individual instruments or the individual themes of music, your brain waves. So, coming back to the brain itself, you have brainwave activity from half a hertz all the way up to, let's call it 200 hertz, but we really think about it from half a hertz to 40 hertz. And within that band of brainwave activity, you have delta waves, which are the slowest, and delta waves are primarily evident during sleep. And actually, during sleep, this beautiful slow pulse of delta waves is really important for the functioning of your brain. I'm sure we'll talk more about it later. Then you have theta waves, and theta waves often represent more of a dream state. Then you have alpha waves. Alpha waves are a very important brainwave state, and they are from 8 to 12 hertz. And alpha is a brain state that's associated with quiet, focused calm. So when you're doing internal sensory processing, when you're very, very calm, when you're super focused on just one thing, you are in an alpha state. Then beta activity is the activity that most of us are in much of the day. Beta activity is what we read when your brain is thinking actively. So you're in a healthy, positive thinking state. High beta activity, now we're talking more like 25 hertz and up. High beta activity is something that we read when your brain is in more of an anxious state. So when your brain is over processing, anxious, you see more high beta. Gamma activity plays an important role in, that's the highest. It's actually still not even clear to neuroscience exactly what gamma activity does, but it's variously involved in different processes within the brain and possibly coordination of those processes. So with the Muse device, we're reading the full set of brainwaves that you have, from delta all the way up to gamma, and as you do anything in the Muse device, as you wear the EEG band, we are going to show you your brainwave activity. So you'll see a graph afterwards that showed you your relative levels of alpha, beta, theta, delta, gamma throughout the course of the exercise that you're doing with the Muse. And a brand new feature that we have is an AI coach. And so that AI coach actually is able to look at your session and then in plain language explain to you what's going on and what's happening within your brainwave activity. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you mentioned a few different brainwaves, and it made me think of potentially how people would describe it. And that might be false. So it's going to be more of a question for you. So theta, would that be potentially when you're kind of that fight or flight kind of stressful response in the body?
No, so theta is more of a dream state. So we see theta arrive in a
Also,
few places.
the one before
Um,
the top one,
High beta.
high beta. Yeah, would that be
Yes.
more of that response?
Yes. Yep. So one of the common ways when you look at brainwave activity and use it as a monitor of stress is to look at the relative levels of alpha waves versus high beta waves. And that gives you an interesting marker of your level of stress because high beta is associated with greater anxiety and stress. High alpha is associated with greater levels of calm, peace, and focus.
So that would be kind of that flow state for the alpha somewhat.
Yes, flow isn't completely alpha waves, but definitely high meditation state. Flow is slightly different, but for all intents and purposes, that feeling that yes, you are, calm, at peace, and buzzing along in a positive way.
Okay, perfect. Maybe I'm trying to generalize it too much, but that's kind of what it made me think of. Um, okay, so that's perfect. So I love to tie it to we talk about fat loss and fitness a lot on the podcast. So we talk about when the body is in a high stress state, it is easier to keep on to the weight, potentially put on some fat. People make different decisions during those times. So how can the training with Muse help to make a difference to help get people down from that high beta
Yep.
state?
Awesome question. So there are various different forms of training that the Muse device has. Muse is an overall brain health tool. One of the most popular applications inside of Muse is the meditation tool, and that is extremely good at teaching you to get out of high beta and into alpha. So in Muse's neurofeedback guided meditation, you are going through a simple meditation exercise where you're focusing on your breath, but you're actually hearing the sound of your brain activity during that exercise, and it's amazing. So what we do is we translate your brain activity into guiding sounds. When you're thinking, distracted, your brain's bouncing all over the place, you're in high beta, you hear it as stormy. And as you come to quiet, focused attention, increasing your alpha levels, the storm quiets down. And if you're able to maintain calm, focused attention for 5 seconds or more, those little birds start to tweet, the birds that you referenced earlier. Everybody loves the birds. So
Yeah.
that both becomes a reinforcement for you to say, hey, yeah, I'm in the right state. This is awesome. Yeah, this feels good. Keep going. And it is a classically conditioned reinforcement to your brain to say, this is a good state to be in. Remember the state. Come back here. We're rewarding you for this state. And so it makes it much, much easier to return to that state future times. And it makes it very, very fast and efficient to learn how to meditate and learn how to manage your mind so that when your mind wanders off into that high beta anxious thinking state, you are very easily able to notice, to say, oh, my brain's there, I don't want it to be there, and to then focus your attention on your breath, do the thing that you do in your mind meditation with Muse, calm your mind, and then come back down to a lower alpha state, a state of great calm and focus. So Muse is really effective at training you how to do that because during the session you're getting real-time feedback. After the session, you actually see your scores. So you see what your brain was doing. You're able to track your progress session after session. And then when you are no longer wearing the Muse and you go off into your real life, your brain has learned how to come to this calm state. And you're much better able to, in your daily life, notice when you're ramped and then bring yourself back down and stay in that place of calm.
Yeah, that is one thing that I noticed from using the first device for, oh gosh, for a year straight, because I did a full year of membership on it. That was the beauty of it, is when you sit down to meditate, before I had the device, you just catch yourself 5 minutes later. It's like, oh, I've been wandering for 5 minutes, right? It's like my brain has been kind of distracted and thinking about something else. And it's not only until you catch yourself, which could be a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes later. But the device does a really good job at, I don't know if there's different sounds, but I always use the sound of rain. So whenever it starts raining louder and louder and louder, it's like, hey, you're being distracted. So it was nice to have that external cue to be like, hey, you're going off track, versus me wandering for 2 minutes and being, oh, I haven't been focused for 2 minutes. Let me just kind of recenter myself. And yes, hearing those birds is such a high reward feeling. And when you hear those birds and then you think like, oh yes, I'm hearing the birds, bam, it starts to rain, because then you thought, oh yeah, I'm hearing the birds, and it kind of throws you off track. So you learn to celebrate without celebrating with too much brain activity, so that you can like stay focused.
And that's actually exactly, so you hit on something super important. So what you learn in meditation is to not get upset when things don't go your way, when it gets stormy, and to not get distracted and not get pulled off task when things are going really well, and you not just dive into, oh my God, this is amazing, and then it pulls you off task. So what you're learning with the Muse device and any meditation practice is equanimity. The ability to be with what is, to accept the current situation with grace and with ease, to not get upset about things that are not working your way, to be able to move your mind back to what matters, and to keep anchored in this place of calm.
Yeah, it does force you to be calm, because if you get upset that you went from bird to rain, because you're getting upset, there's even more rain, and then it's even louder and louder and louder, and eventually you are forced to be like, okay, let me just bring myself back to try to calm down the rain. I think humans always trying to find hacks or strategies or ways to kind of play the system, and I can't be the only one, because when it starts to rain, I think, okay, I want the birds. So then I try to think on, okay, my breath. I think of my breath. So I think of my belly expanding and coming back in. And if that doesn't work, then I try to focus on like between my two eyes. And if that doesn't work, I try to focus on something else. So, and then eventually you kind of find your little, how to say that? Is there a flow, or do people develop their own strategies to calm themselves down? Like, did they develop those as they trying to kind of reel themselves back in?
Yeah, people develop them. So what you just described is absolutely amazing. So, your mind wanders, you hear the storm, and then it immediately cues for you inside of you internally, like, what are all the different things I can try to calm myself down right now? Is this working to calm myself down? Not really. Let's try something else. Is this working? Hey, that seems to be kind of working. Let's do more of that. Oh yeah, it is working. All right, let's stick with it. So could you imagine if you were out in your real life and something awful happens, you hurt yourself, you get in a car accident, if your brain immediately goes to the strategy of, what are the things I can do to calm myself down? Oh, that one's not working, let's try the next one. Like, that would be amazing. And that's what you've been trained to do with the Muse. It's awesome.
Yeah, I like it, because I do see it as like the gym for your mind. And I do see that whenever I stop using it, not to say that the brain atrophied, but there was kind of an atrophy of that internal muscle of being able to calm myself down and kind of reel myself back in. Because if I squat for 6 months in a row, I'll be pretty strong every time I need to squat. But if I stop for 2 months and I try and get back into it, it's weaker. It's not coordinated. Muscles aren't firing properly. It's kind of weird to get back into it. And I found that to be the same. If I stop for a while, I was like, oh, I need to continue to train it to make sure that muscle stays sharp, to make sure that I stay on top of my game. And I did miss that. So I'm happy I got a device now, because I get to retrain for it.
Get to go back there. What were some of the things that you noticed when you were using it? I mean, you revealed that was an incredibly stressful time in your life. How did you find it helpful?
Honestly, like, I was going to ask you a question about this, but to me, it just built drastic mental resilience during that time, because every day was stressful. Every day I could run to the hospital or wake up to a scream in the middle of the night. Like, there was so much that was happening. Plus, I was trying to grow a company and make money to pay for the treatments and everything. So to me, it was very much that whenever something harsh did happen, I had my little my little flow that I had developed for myself to kind of keep myself centered and not say be stoic, but just be like, okay, like I'm in control, I'm calm. Let's just go through the motion of what needs to happen when this situation comes up. So it really helped me to remain, how can I say that? I say that just conscious of the choice and be intentional with the action. I think is the word I'm looking for. For me to be intentional with the actions. I was like, I know what to do, but if I was to freak out and not control myself, I would probably like, oh, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do this, and then the right thing wouldn't get done. So it really forced me to really dial in and just go through the motion that I know that I needed to do to provide and care at that time. And it was very useful because if not, very high stress, high cortisol, probably stressed out of my mind, I probably would have gotten sick at the end of the day if I didn't have that ability to kind of reel myself back in. So from a mental resilience standpoint, it was such a beautiful gift. And
Mm.
those those birds were magical, because once you passed, I kept meditating with it, and I moved to Tulum, Mexico, and I found myself one day just like walking in the street, and I just heard birds, and my brain just went. I locked in so fast. It was like the pill limitless. You know, he takes the pill and gets really dialed in. That's what happened. I was walking basically on the side of the jungle. I heard the birds. My brain just went whoom. And I was so focused on my walk. I was so ready to be focused on something. So there is like a Pavlov effect, right? There's a conditioning
Yeah.
effect to kind of to the birds.
Yep. It trains your brain to get to that state really, really quickly.
It is there a way to play around with the sounds that you condition yourself to?
Yeah, so in the Muse, we actually have lots of different soundscapes. So you've chosen rainforest, which is what most people land on first, but there's probably 10 different soundscapes that you can choose. And then you can also modify any of the sounds. So if you don't like the rain being so loud, you can shut it down. If you find the birds distracting, you can turn them off. So all the sounds are modifiable. And then we also have other exercises inside of the Muse. So we've been talking about the mind meditation, the focused attention, where you're reinforced by the tweet of birds to be able to stay attentive and calm. We also have heart meditation, and there you're actually listening to the sound of your heart like the beating of a drum. And what you're listening to is your sinusoidal arrhythmia. So we all have heard of HRV. What HRV really is the difference between your highest heartbeat on your in breath and your lowest heartbeat on your out breath. And so with the Muse heart meditation, you're actually listening to the sound of your heart speeding up and slowing down and speeding up and slowing down. And that actually allows you to condition yourself to understand what you need to do to increase your HRV, to be able to have long, extended exhales that slow your heart rate down. And afterwards, you see a graph that actually shows you what your heart was doing, and you actually see your HRV. And there we have, I'm going on a tangent because you asked about sound. So there we have different sounds with different kinds of drums for each of the different exercises. There's also a bird tweeting sound there, but it's different. So the app is quite like flexible and customizable in terms of finding the sounds that you love and the sounds that really work for you to cue in with your own physiology.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The reason I was asking is because I was gonna say I'm gonna condition myself to birds, and then when I need to really do deep focus work for the business, I'm just gonna put my headphones in with like a bird playlist, so then I can just really, really be focused. It is meant to be used to your advantage, and I think that's the beauty. The,
Totally.
the beauty about the tool is you get to condition yourself, and I think that that's something that a lot of people don't think is possible for them, right? And I'll share this. How many people do you hear is like, I'm too old for this. Like I can't, you can't change my mind, or my body can't change, or my mind can change. But from all the studies that you guys have done and all the database that you guys have, what's the oldest client that you guys have seen kind of go through this and been able to condition themselves mentally?
So I know in our database we have people who, from very young ages, all the way up to at least 90, like literally at least 90. And there are
Beautiful.
quite a number of studies that are run with Muse, and now a lot of the studies are with people with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and MCI, mild cognitive impairment. And they're using the Muse device to help track their sleep, and improve their cognitive function. And so we literally have older adults with Alzheimer's who are still able to use the device.
Just a little interruption before we get into today's episode. So as you may know, I run these shows ad-free. Everything is self-funded through our coaching program. So the small little ask that I have for you is to simply subscribe to the YouTube channel to support the work that we do, and to follow if you're listening on audio. Also, I want to give you a free gift. I wrote 6 emails that will tell you exactly how to figure out your calorie goal, your protein goal, to help you improve your body composition, along with over 100 exercise videos that I've personally filmed, with a little workout program in there and some meal plans to help you get started on your transformation so that you can lose your next 3 to 5 pounds on me within the next few weeks. And you can sign up for that absolutely for free by heading down below in the description and simply entering your name and email so that I can send you all the information and the meal plans and the workouts. So enjoy this free gift and enjoy the rest of the show.
Our brains are plastic. And so even with conditions with age-related cognitive decline, if you move your brain in the right ways, if you engage it, you can still continue to create neuroplastic change. There's another example of a study that was done by Baker's Hospital with older adults who were lonely using Muse. And there it was demonstrated that these older adults suffering from loneliness, people who aren't necessarily inclined to reach out or use tools or figure out how to use technology, they started using Muse, and the study demonstrated significant improvements in their depression and improvements in quality of life. So you are never too old to pick up a piece of technology and use it. And the more you do, the more you make positive change in your brain.
The link to depression and anxiety, what have you guys seen in terms of using the device and kind of conditioning the brain? How does that help? Is it training the brain to calm down in terms of brainwave and being able to spend more time in like an alpha or something like that? Or is it potentially something I'm missing? But I'm just curious as to how it would help for those specific conditions, because I think in this day and age, a lot of people are having a hard time with those two.
Sure. So I should mention that Muse is cleared by the FDA in the general wellness category. So it's intended to help people who are living with a condition like depression and anxiety. It is, not cleared to treat this condition. However, the studies that have been done with Muse do demonstrate significant improvements in these conditions. So just my little FDA disclaimer there.
Yeah, we need
in
to.
terms of the Yes, in terms of the mechanistic approach. So with something like anxiety or anxious thinking, how it works is on several levels. So one, you're taking deep breaths, you are calming your physiology. Two, you're training yourself to stay in alpha. So you're staying in a brainwave associated with calm, focused attention. So you're training your brain to be there. And then three, you're also learning to manage your mind. So in Muse Mind meditation, when your mind wanders, you've heard the sound picks up, the reins pick up, and it becomes your cue to notice that your mind is wandering, and then to bring your attention back to your breath and quiet the sound. So in that moment, you're doing something quite amazing. You're being trained to observe your own thinking. So most of us go through our life just with thoughts in our head, and we think those thoughts and we assume that they're supposed to be there because they're just there. And those thoughts can be anxious, frustrating, stressful, and we just let them go. What you learn when you do this activity is that you can have these thoughts and then make a different choice about engaging with them because you don't actually need to think them. So I might have a thought like, I'm sitting in traffic. I might have a thought of like, oh no, I'm going to be late, which spirals to my boss is going to be bad, which spirals to, I'm going to get in trouble today, which spirals and spirals. I can, after training your mind with a meditation practice, you can sit in traffic. You can have the first thought of, oh no, I'm going to be late. And you can notice that you had that thought. And then instead of jumping to the next thought and the thought after that, you can instead just say, hey, I saw I had a thought. I'm going to choose to bring my brain elsewhere. And so you bring your attention to your breath. If you're sitting in the car, maybe you choose to put on a podcast, do something meaningful, instead of letting your brain spiral. So you're also learning how to control your mental space, to keep it clean, to keep it functional for you. And you're learning how to not buy into these anxious thoughts that just feed forward and roll and create more anxiety, but instead make better choices with where your brain goes and what you think about in order to keep yourself both productive and calm.
Yeah, what a wild concept to have a thought and to be okay with not doing anything about it. You
I
just
don't have to think this thought. Yes.
it's just
It
there. You don't have
arose.
to do
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I can actively choose to do something that's not that thought. I can actively
Yeah.
choose to do something else.
It puts you, it takes you out of a state of reactivity. I think that's one of the big things that I saw that it helped me with, was that whenever there is a thought, or there is like a, or you run a company, stuff is gonna break sometimes. You get a bad news, you get an email or a text or a Slack message, and being able to observe that and be like, okay, cool. I don't have to freak out. It's not the end of the world. We can solve this. So I think it does help you make less reactive, and you start to make decisions from a place of having that space to be able to have clarity versus kind of falling prey to day-to-day notifications that people are being
Totally.
bombarded left and right with.
Totally, totally. And you don't just need to be running a company. I mean, at any point in your life, you have kids, you have milk that spills on the floor when you open it and it wasn't properly closed and it falls out of the fridge. Like all of this stuff just is constantly happening. And you can be in control of how you react to it. And then it also expands out into other aspects of your life, like going to the gym or, going running in the first 3 minutes. It feels very difficult and challenging. And you could easily be like, this sucks. I'm going to listen to all the things in my body that are screaming, stop right now. Or you can take what you learn in practices like this and say, I know my body is reacting. I know my mind is reacting. I ultimately know it's going to be okay because everybody else in the gym is doing it and they're fine. And I can stick with this. I can move my mind away from those thoughts and move them onto a positive future thought, and stick with the thing I want to do and get further. The same thing applies to dieting. I mean, we have all of this food noise in our mind, so many of us. And, the food noise of cookies and Christmas, it's holiday time for us right now. All the things come up, and you can either give into that noise and obsess about it and ruminate and act on it, or you can have the first thought come up and then be able to say, hey, that's just food noise. I know it's going to make some noise in my brain. I know it's going to give me some feelings in my body. And I know that if I move my attention elsewhere and do something else, it will eventually go away. And I don't need to buy into it or ride it further.
Yeah, and stressful eating, which kind of ties into all the cookies and the ice cream and everything, right? You had a stressful day at work, and kind of having that space to make a different decision, which I think is where a lot of people struggle with, is learning to make good food decisions when they're stressed. Um, as you were sharing all of this, it made me think of, I really need to take an ice bath with the Muse,
Oh, yeah.
because I would be curious to see like the spike in brain activity and trying to bring it down while you're in an ice bath. Have you had anyone do that? Someone must have tried.
Yeah, totally. There's a psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Cody Rell, and he loves the Muse, and he's been doing a number of experiments with it. And there's actually a company that makes ice baths, and they're currently running a study of people using their dunk tanks along with the Muse device to be able
Yeah.
to track brainwave activity and reactivity and thoughts, and then also prefrontal oxygenation. Because as we've mentioned, the new device with the FNIR sensors is able to measure the blood flow and the oxygen flow to your prefrontal cortex, and oxygen saturation in your body and oxygen movement throughout your body is something that is quite affected when you get in and out of freezing cold water.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. I'm gonna have to do my own little experiment just for the fun of it. I'm very curious to see how long it would take me to reel it back in as I get in there. I'd love to talk about social media and kind of its effect on the brain, because we talked a lot about, depression, anxiety, and I think social media can cause some of these things for a lot of people, and being able to kind of pull yourself back. I do digital detoxes the first 7 days of every month. no phone, no computer. I don't work. I don't touch anything that's digital for 7 days. I've been doing this for over 3 years now. And it's done wonders for my mind in terms of resilience and not being scatterbrained. So have you guys seen shift in your data as kind of the evolution of social media has progressed?
That's a great question, and it's not actually something that we have looked at or tracked. But I would imagine that you see a significant change in people's brain activity as a result of doom scrolling, anxiety, and constant pings that, cause your attention to move back and forth and back and forth. And actually, when I started using the Muse back in 2012, when we first built our first intervention, one of the very first things that I noticed was that I no longer responded to my cell phone in the same way. So back then it was a little Nokia flip phone.
Yeah.
And it used to be that anything that happened, I had a thought, good or bad, I had a feeling, good or bad, my hand would go to my phone, and I just want to go to my phone. And after I started using the Muse and trained myself for a little bit in the process of noticing my distractions and then making a different choice, my desire to reach for my phone just kind of dissipated. That clicky desire, that dopamine response to just be clicky and respond to things quickly started to fade away because I had learned resilience inside of my own body. And it wasn't something that I had intentionally wanted. I didn't go into this saying, oh, I want to work on my phone addiction. It just happened as a byproduct of rewiring and reworking how my mind and body work together.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think just from that front, a lot of people would benefit because I do have a lot of people telling me that they wish that they could do a digital detox. I'm like, "Yeah, you can, you just turn off the thing, and but it's very hard for a lot of people to do. Um, so you mentioned quite a few times different things that people can do with the device. Then you mentioned sleeping with it. So, do you mind kind of going through the list of all the things that people can track and can do with it? Because again, originally when I was introduced to your company, it was as a meditation company, but you guys now are all focused on overall brain health.
Yes. So Muse has so many things you can do with it. It's totally amazing. So, as a brain health platform, Muse allows you to do focused attention meditation, which we've been talking about. Um, and then other forms of meditation. We have meditation for the heart, the breath. So, we have breath practices where you have different styles of breathing that can upregulate or downregulate your energy levels and your focus. And we have stillness meditation to help you find stillness in your body. Then we also provide metrics on your brain. So you can see your brainwave activity throughout the course of any exercise. You can see your heart rate throughout the course of any exercise. And you can also, after you do enough sessions, see markers of cognitive function. So one marker that we have is your alpha peak frequency. And so Muse tracks your alpha peak frequency, which is kind of a measure of how efficiently your brain is functioning. And you can track it session after session, day after day, and see how it varies morning, night, week after week. Then we have an entire sleep section with the Muse. So Muse can track your sleep as effectively as a sleep lab. So it's now commonly used in tons of research studies as an at-home sleep research tool. Instead of sending somebody to a sleep lab, they instead send them a Muse to their own home and
Cool.
use it equivalently. It's that accurate. And so Muse tracks your sleep like a sleep lab, but it doesn't just track, it also provides interventions to help you sleep better. So we have something that's called the digital sleeping pill. And with the digital sleeping pill, the Muse is tracking your brain activity as you fall asleep. And it is shifting guided audio that you're listening to in such a way that it walks your brain into sleep. And then if you wear the Muse band throughout the night, if you wake up in the night, it automatically brings back in the same experience that helped you fall asleep the first time to help you fall back asleep. So that's amazing. It's been demonstrated to improve sleep quality by over 20% overall, which is insane.
Massive.
Yeah, and it specifically improves your latency to sleep onset. So how quickly you fall asleep, it can improve it by 55%. So there's a whole world of sleep that we have with Muse, and we have a brand new sleep intervention that's coming out that enhances your deep sleep. So we're working with labs in the US and Canada and Spain, and they wanted to do a study with older adults with mild cognitive impairment to see if by improving their deep sleep, they could improve their cognitive function the next day. So they asked us to build this deep sleep intervention. And what it does is it tracks your delta activity in deep sleep, and it stimulates your delta waves on the upswing of each of your delta waves. So it's a super personalized. It's like deeply tracking your own like moment by moment delta wave activity and enhancing it in order to overall enhance your deep sleep, which overall enhances your quality of sleep, which can lead to things like better clearance of toxins from your brain, potential improvement in cognitive function the next day, and all sorts of awesome changes. So that's something that's going to be coming out in January to all of our users. So that's sleep. And every time we have more innovations, we deliver them through the platform. And then we have a whole other area of use, all in the very same device with FNIRS, the functional near infrared spectroscopy. So that is tracking your oxygen levels that are being delivered to and used by your brain. So it's looking at the level of oxygen that comes to your left and right prefrontal cortex, how much oxygen your brain is using. And not only is it tracking it, but we also are able to train you to upregulate blood and oxygen flow to your prefrontal cortex. So we have something called the Athena strength sessions. So you're working on your mental strength by doing neurofeedback, by watching an owl fly. And the more oxygen you bring to your prefrontal cortex, the faster the owl flies. And it really works. You can really train your brain to deliver more oxygen, more nutrients to itself. So there's a whole other, aspect of the tracking and training with oxygen. And all of that stuff is all just in this one small, sweet little device, the Muse Athena.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's wild.
Yeah,
Like I tell this to the neuroscientists that we work with. Like I show them what the device can do, and they're like their jaws on the floor. They can't believe that such a thing exists. So we're all pretty giddy.
yeah, they're like, you don't have to carry this big computer with you to be able to do all of these things. It's honestly, it's very incredible what you guys have built. And just for the people listening, I do have more questions, but if you guys want one, I've been using mine. There's a link down below in the description, so you guys can check it out, and you get a sweet deal on it too. So, question: you talked about sleep and being able to kind of enhance down the road, kind of like deep sleep and all those things. Is that done through? I'm going to assume through auditory to be able
Yeah,
to simulate that.
exactly. It's through audio.
Okay.
So you can either just listen to the sound coming from your phone.
Yeah.
So you just use the speaker on your phone, and it's quite amazing. While you're asleep, it plays little tones. And if the tones are so loud that it wakes you up, the Muse detects that and automatically adjusts the volume of the tones. And if the tones are so quiet that it's not being registered by your brain, the Muse detects that and it boosts the audio just ever so slightly so that your brain registers it, but it doesn't fall asleep. But it doesn't wake you up. It's like amazing. So you can either just use the speaker on your phone or you can use a pair of headphones for it.
Perfect. So I guess you just turn on airplane mode and then keep the Wi-Fi on, and that's kind of how you connected, or the Bluetooth on.
It's just Bluetooth. So actually all of this can work with no Wi-Fi. So if you're someone who doesn't like the Wi-Fi on at night, no problem. You just need to be Bluetooth connected to the speakers. You just need to be Bluetooth connected to your phone.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I just have airplane mode. I don't want notifications of any sort. So while I'm sleeping. Okay, so that's awesome. So not to compare it to, but I was wearing Whoop for a really long time in Oring and things. So basically, you can replace that device by tracking your sleep, because I hate having three things on my wrist and a bunch of things on my fingers. So I can just wear this at nighttime, because I haven't tried that function yet. I'm very excited about that because I'm a big nerd when it comes to sleep, but it always just give you data. They never allow you to improve the data besides like, hey, you should do this. But so to have the audio to be able to optimize the data, that's actually very interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing. So it's much more accurate than Whoop or an Aura. And as you just said, it has the intervention. So it has all of these cool features that actually help you fall asleep, fall back asleep, and sleep more deeply.
Yeah, just that alone is a game changer, especially for the people listening in terms of like weight loss and building muscle. If we can improve your sleep to like 20%, that is a pretty significant difference in how well your body is going to be recovered. That you're going to be able to train. I mean, you'll be less tired, so less craving, so less likely to eat food that you're not supposed to eat. So it makes don't fall into that vicious cycle ultimately. Um, Now, honestly, it's pretty incredible what you guys have built. So um, I can't stress this to people enough. Get a freaking device because if you're spending so much effort and time and money training your brain, as training your body, and you're trying to spend a lot of money on food and you're going to the gym, not training your brain feels like a massive missed opportunity that would help to elevate those other areas of your life. Right? I can't see that you would not be. You're going to be a better partner. You'll be a better leader in your community. You'll be better at your family. You'll be better at the gym. You'll be better on your nutrition if you sleep well and your brain is better. I'd love to ask you a selfish question now because
Sure.
you've dealt with concussion. Like I said, I was at
Yes.
a professional basketball scouting event in July, and I got knocked right in the head, blacked out,
Oh,
and
man.
fun little concussion, first concussion of my life. And I'm recovering from it. I can still feel it in like long podcasts like this. Normally, I can have a guest talk for a long time and I can pinpoint 10 different things and be able to keep track of the conversation and circle back to all of the points. And right now, I can maybe hold two max. I lose track of all the other ones. So I'm working my way back. So for you, how was it to kind of build back up from the concussion, and what features specifically did you use to help yourself?
Oh, great question. Okay. So in concussion, basically your brain becomes dysregulated and you end up with significant amount of inflammation. And so what you're doing, a lot of your recovery is around re-regulating your brain, re-regulating the blood flow to your brain and the mitochondrial efficiency of your brain, as well as decreasing inflammation. So, one of the things that becomes dysregulated for many people is mood. So, after a concussion, you might find that you're quick to anger or you're depressed. And so, being able to train, as we've talked about, help you manage anger, frustration, depression is really, really key. So, meditation is incredibly key. You also want to learn to upregulate blood flow to your brain again because that becomes dysregulated. So, actually, exercise after concussion is really important. There used to be the thought that after a concussion, you should do nothing and
Yeah.
just, stay as stationary as possible. That's no longer the belief. Take 3 or 4 days to stabilize and then begin to exercise slowly bit by bit. So, particularly cardiovascular exercise, so that you're re regulating your blood flow to your brain and your metabolic function. Muse can potentially help with that with its Athena prefrontal cortex exercise that helps you upregulate oxygen. And then another huge thing that becomes dysregulated with concussion is sleep. And once your sleep becomes dysregulated, it then becomes more difficult for your brain to re-regulate and self-manage. So the
Yeah.
sleep features are incredibly key. And then overall, you want to manage your stress levels and your cortisol levels because you want to ultimately decrease inflammation in your brain as much as possible and give your brain healthy rest. So, meditation is one of those ways that is key to help your brain rest, often throughout the day as you give it little bits more stimulation bit by bit as you come back to normal. So, as somebody who has had many concussions, to hear that you've had one, my heart goes out to you. It takes a while, but maintain all of the healthy habits that you know how to do. Make sure that you're sleeping well, staying well hydrated, doing exercise, and then only bringing yourself to the edge without going over in terms of stimulation. So take frequent brain breaks so that bit by bit you can recover and rebuild without over triggering or over traumatizing yourself.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I've had to include breaks in my day and like blue light blocking classes because or else it gets too much. And same with just physical exercise also because there's a point where if I'd exert so much, the brain would start to shut down and I'd get sleepy at the gym. I could just lay on the ground and fall asleep basically. So I've building my way back up. So I appreciate those. I'll definitely be using those functions in the app, because like you said, for you it happened when you already had built Muse, so it's great to have the tools. But you know how it is when you're really really smart and you're the leader in the whole thing, and then it kind of goes down a bit. You're like, this sucks. This doesn't feel too great. I need to rebuild myself back up to where I was before. But it is a heck of a journey to get back up there.
It really is. And it requires, again, this balance of equanimity, accepting what is. This is where you're at right now, and that's okay. Not becoming frustrated at it or frustrated at the process. It just is a process. The balance between equanimity and desiring to improve and applying yourself to improving bit by bit and believing and knowing that you can and will get there. So don't stop the process of improving, and give yourself lots of support, self-love, compassion, and ease along the way.
Yeah, those are hard lessons to learn. Well, we're
Yes.
well on our way. Um, for I say for the average user to start to see some benefits in terms of kind of that mental conditioning, whether it's the meditation or the sleep or things like that. The sleep, I guess you have to wear it all night long. But I'm talking about like meditation and some of those other trainings. What is a good amount of time for people to start with, and at what frequency per week?
Sure. So there have been lots and lots of studies done with Muse, and the average amount of time that people start with in these studies is 5 minutes. It's very,
Okay.
very like low commitment. So start with 5 minutes of mind meditation per day. And then over time, build yourself up to 10 minutes. So it might be that at the end of week 1, you're at 7 minutes. Week 2, maybe you're at 8 or 9 minutes. Then by week 4, you're at 10 minutes, and then you can stay there. You don't need to do more than that. The Athena Strength meditation, which is the prefrontal cortex neurofeedback, there you can start at just 3 minutes. So do a 3-minute exercise and build yourself up to 5 minutes. You will get tired at the end of 3 minutes, which is okay. I would say do Athena Strength 3 times a week, 3 to 4 times. Do mind meditation if you can every single day, and make that an anchor of your practice. If you have difficulty sleeping, then you can use Muse's go to sleep features, or if you have difficulty falling back asleep, then use the go to sleep features. The digital sleeping pill takes 2 or 3 days to get used to. It can be a little strange at first, but after that, if you're somebody who has the kind of sleep disorder that it works for, people love it and they just sleep with it every single night, and it really, really works. So play around with it, give it a few days, figure out what there seems to work for you. And Muse mind meditation really is the cornerstone. And when we look at studies, like the Mayo Clinic did a study with their doctors using Muse. They used it for an average of 5 minutes a day. It's meditation features and sleep features. And after six weeks, they saw a 54% decrease in burnout. They saw improvements in their cognitive function, in their sleep, decrease in stress. So it's really significant if you continue on with it. And just like going to the gym, it's something that you want to be doing regularly. If you can do it every day, just choose a time when it naturally becomes part of your schedule. That is the ideal. If you only end up doing it 3 or 4 times a week, that's okay, but stick with it. And as you do over time, you're going to see it build.
Yeah. Okay. So that's going to be my next question. Is there like a time in the day that would be best? But basically, consistency is going to be the name of the game, and whenever that can be for most part.
Exactly. There's no magic time. If you're a morning person, do it in the morning. If you feel sleepy in the morning and don't want to do it, fine, do it in the evening. Just choose the time that works for you and that you will find to do consistently.
Oh, beautiful. I'm very excited to wear it for sleep and an ice bath. I think that'd be very interesting. Um, Out of curiosity, I'm sure you've, have so much data on your own brain from, 20 years of doing this. Was there ever any data that surprised you about your own brain on some tests that you ran?
Totally. So when I was in my 20s running Muse at the, like, I'm 46 now, as I said, when I was like 29 or 30, I thought it was pretty obvious that I had ADD because I love to do a million things simultaneously. And so I went in for a professional ADD assessment. I paid a lot of money for it. They had me answer a bunch of questions. To me, it was really obvious. There are things like, did you lose your mittens as a child? Was your closet disorganized? Everyone was, yes, 10 out of 10, absolutely. And at the
Yeah.
end of the assessment, they said, well, you're very high functioning and we're not going to give you a diagnosis of ADHD or ADD. I was like, what? Okay. And then years later, I went back and I looked at my EEG from that time, from a much wiser place. And I looked at my brain, and my brain was so clearly the brain of somebody with ADHD. It was high theta activity, low frontal beta activity. It was like a classic textbook of an ADD brain.
Yeah.
I looked. It was actually relatively recently that I looked back at those scans, and I laughed and I was like, they wouldn't give me the diagnosis, but like, had you just looked at my brain, it would have been so obvious. And many years of pain and frustration, and my husband wondering why I was so disorganized in various ways would have been avoided because I would have had this diagnosis and actually worked on treating it in the proper ways.
So do you guys use a device as some form of diagnosis for certain things, as an example, ADHD?
So, Muse cannot be used to treat or diagnose any condition.
Okay.
It is not a medical device. However, when I look back at my own data as a trained neuroscientist, I can look in the data and I can see some things that are quite obvious.
Yeah, yeah. Because I guess it's a whole different other ball game legally if you go down the path of like using it for diagnosis or things like that.
Yeah, so there are aspects of the Muse tool, like the focused attention meditation and the prefrontal cortex neurofeedback strength sessions, that can be very helpful with people who have focus challenge. And then there's a company called MindLift, and they build neurofeedback applications on the Muse, and they actually have a clinician in their loop so they can say things like ADD because they have a clinician actually part of their system.
Yeah.
And so if you have a Muse device, you can also use the MindLift software, MYNDLIFT, and it can be incredibly helpful at helping to manage conditions similar to ADD.
Okay. Oh, beautiful. Now, damn, I'm gonna wear it during one of my working sessions. I'm curious to see. I'm curious to see the data. Now I'm just gonna be testing my whole day. Now I think is what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna wear it for different things and see what the data gives me and see where I can improve. Um, so I love to ask you a question from a founder standpoint because
Sure.
a lot of people that listen to the show have either built something, a company. So I know some of them have had some exits. Some people are wanting to serve, like they have a heart to serve. We have a lot of caregiver, a lot of people that again either are building companies, work for companies, and or just simply want to help in their own little way. What is one thing you wish someone told you before becoming a founder?
Oh, that's a great question. So, I have to think about that one. One way to answer that is by talking about the things I'm glad people didn't tell me. I'm glad they didn't tell me how hard it was, how many challenges would be ahead of me, how long it might take. Because had they told me these things, I may not have done it.
Hmm.
But not knowing, I went ahead and plowed through all of the challenges, have stuck with it all this time, which has felt like no time has gone by. I mean, everything's always just constantly exciting. Managed all of the challenges that come with employees and, having to make payroll, all of those things. And
Yeah.
so I'm glad nobody at the get-go tried to talk me out of it by articulating the reality. And I'm glad that I had the tools throughout it to help me manage the stress and anxiety, and heartbreak that also come with running a company and having to manage people and employees and payrolls. Let's see if I have a different answer.
That's pretty good. I think it is true. If usually when people are trying to start something, a lot of people are trying to talk them out of it. And I think as much as me. Once if someone tells you there's going to be all these 50 different challenges, you're like, wow, that seems so hard. But once you're in it, you're just dealing with the one that's in front of you. You don't know the next one
Yeah.
that's coming. So you just deal with them one at a time whenever they do show up. And it doesn't feel as bad as if someone was like, here's everything you're going to deal with over the course of doing this. And you're like, yeah, this is pretty overwhelming. I don't know if this is worth it.
And once you get into it, I mean, having any great idea and executing on it is always a balance of hearing positive voices about it and negative voices about it. There's always going to be people who want to tell you how it's not going to work, um, and people who are going to encourage you and say, yes, yes, go forward and do this. And you really have to be smart about being encouraged and motivated and supported by those positive voices, and managing the wisdom of those negative voices and choosing which ones really have wise information for you and which ones are simply people who are, scared on your behalf or want to naysay, and being able to pull out the wisdom and learn from it and grow through it while not being dissuaded by the naysayers.
I think it's a beautiful lesson right there. So I want to say a few things. One, I want to say a big thank you, for taking the time to share with us your story. And honestly, I appreciate you for the work that you do because you had a massive impact on my life without even knowing it. And I think that's the
Oh my
beauty
God.
of, in being in business and having such a wide impact is you're just impacting people's life. Like I'm sure there's thousands and thousands of stories like mine. So I appreciate you for that. I'm very excited that I got reconnected to you guys because grief, passed away, moved to different countries. And then when the email came in, I was like, I love this company. I'm like, fantastic. We are doing this interview. I'm excited to use the device again because I had forgotten about it. And again, I appreciate for the work that you do. And for the people listening, again, I already said it, but down below, there's a link for you to get your own device. Highly recommend you get one. I'll be honest, I don't endorse companies that I don't own shares in. So I'm always public to people whenever I do endorse something is usually because I put money into it and I own equity in it. I have no equity in Muse, but this is just like a genuine like I like the product, and so that's why I was excited to have you on the podcast. So I want to say a big thank you for the work that you do.
Oh my God, it's such an honor and a pleasure to have met you and to hear your story. And it's unbelievable that we were able to be there with you in your hard time to support you. I I am floored. I don't know what to say except thank you and, so much love. And I'm so glad you were able to gracefully navigate what was an incredibly challenging time.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And again, for everyone listening, I'll put a ton of link down below so you guys can check out their work, their social media, and their website. But get on this. It's 2026. It's the time for you to become the best version of yourself. So I appreciate everyone for listening. Ariel, thank you for jumping on, and we'll see everyone in the next episode. Bye, everyone.